Hey guys, so today I wanted to do a little tutorial on creating this pointer tracker in bricks. I'm going to approach it a little bit differently to I have with my previous videos, where I want to go the super simple copy paste. Here it is for those who just want that, and then I'll go to the next stage, which is explaining a little bit more about how to make it better. And then I'll go to the next stage, which is going into more detail about how the code actually works. That way, that if you're only interested in getting it working, it's nice and quick. If you want more detail, then you can stick around for more. Okay, so if you watch this, we've got a little bit of delay in this pointer tracker, which is on purpose, and we can control that using CSS. So very simple. If I point my mouse at the icon here, my tracker grows. If I point my mouse at the button, my tracker shrinks. If I point my mouse at this let's get crazy, it grows a little bit. So I'm going a small, medium, and large, and this is all controlled by adding a simple class to these elements. So you want it medium, we add a class to tell it to go medium. Want it big, we add a class to go big. Want it to go medium, small, we add a class to go small. And that's as simple as that. So that's what we're going to build today. And what I've got over here in my editor is the page we were just looking at. And from this section here is just the content that we're looking at. The code I've put into the editor, which is a code box with some JavaScript in it and a code box with some CSS in it. Now, for these to work correctly in bricks, you need to make sure that under your builder access, you've got code execution enabled for at least the administrator. And then when you're editing in here, when you go to these code boxes, you need to execute and render without a wrapper on each of these. Okay, so let's have a look at how you would implement this from scratch. So I'm going to go from here, I'm going to add a new page. And we'll just call this be really uncreative and call it test pointer. So test pointer, and we're going to edit that with bricks. Okay, I've got a gist here which I'll share. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a copy to clipboard. This is actually a template, a bricks template. So what I need to do is look at the raw, which brings this up just in a raw in a browser. I'm going to copy all of that and paste it to the all that to the clipboard. Come back to my test pointer, and I'm going to paste that into this page here, and that gives me the code that I need. Okay, now we need some content. So let's come back to here and add a section. Put that up there. In the section, we're going to add. What are we going to add here? Let's do the same as what we did with the other one. So we're going to add an icon. So icon there. We're going to add a button, and we're going to add some text. Okay, I'm going to grab some Bob Ross lorem ipsum here and chuck that into my text box. And on my container, I'm just going to add a little bit of row gap here, say maybe 3 rem. So I'm not using any frameworks here. This is just or plugins. This is just pure bricks. In fact, I'll just quickly show you that. So all I've got here is WPCodeBox. These are inconsequential. I've got bricks 1.9.4 installed, and that's all I'm working with. Okay, so that's done. Now, if I just save that and publish and preview this page, I've got a pointer. Right? I haven't got this stuff working here yet. I haven't got the small, medium, large working yet, but I've got my pointer working. So how easy is that? Copy from your gist, paste it into the page, add some content. That's all you have to do to get this working. All right. Now, this isn't the ideal way of getting it to work, so I'm going to go to another stage after this and talk about it. Okay, now the small, medium, and large cursor sizes. If we have a look at the CSS here, what we have here is we've got 3 utility classes for our tracker size. So I've got BB, pointer, tracker size, S, M, and L, right? All we have to do is, let's say on the icon there, we want that to go to large. So we just grab that name there, get our icon, and just add that class to it. Okay, on the button, we're going to add the small, Okay, and then in the text here, we're going to grab maybe, let's do this whole sentence here, and we'll just make it bold and italic, and then that gives us a EM, where is it? EM there. We're going to go class equals, paste my name into there, and we'll make this the medium size, so pointer tracker size M. Save that, and back to here. Now, look at that, growing to large, going to small, growing to medium. All right, easy as that. So if this is all you want to do, you're done. You just copy and paste that gist, which I'll share, into a page, and then you've got your code blocks here which make it work. Right, what we then want to look at is how we can customize this. So if we look at the pointer tracker CSS, we've got variables here. So our pointer tracker width is our default width. So that is when we're not pointing at anything, that's telling it to be a different width. So that's the width there. I've got a 2 rem or 20 pixels. We've got a background, which I'm using the hex RGBA. Let's say we want this to be different. Let's make this a, let's make it a green one. So we go 00FF00, and we'll give it some transparency. We'll make it say 44. Save that. Now we've got a green transparent, okay? So it's as simple as doing that for changing your colors. The tracking, we've got it at 0.4 seconds at the moment, so I'm going to change that to 0.1 seconds. Save that. Now it's really quick, so it's just tracking my cursor really, really quickly. We want it to be really laggy. Let's make that say 0.6 seconds. Okay, now we've got this real big delay as we move our cursor around the screen. Okay, simple as that with CSS. Tracker sizes, 1 rem, 4 rem, and 10 rem. Let's say we go 0.5. Let's go on our medium, let's make that 6. And let's make this huge, let's make that 15 rem. Okay, save that. Back to a test pointer. Huge, tiny, medium sort of size. Okay, so easy, 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 easy. Just change those variables. The rest of this doesn't matter. Okay, so that's it. You can opt out here if that's all you want and all you need. The next stage I'm going to go to is what I would highly recommend, which is taking this code out of the editor and putting it into a code manager. That way it works across the entire site. You're not replicating the code every time. You're not going to accidentally end up with multiple copies of this code. And it's just, it just makes sense to do so. So we're going to head to WPCodeBox. Whatever you use, I'm using CodeBox. And we're going to create a new snippet, and we're going to call this pointer track. Pointer track, that'll do. Whoops. Pointer track. Okay, we're going to make this a SCSS. I pretty much never use CSS in WPCodeBox because you can put CSS directly into SCSS and it gives you the option of using Sass. So I prefer just doing that. Now, I always make my files external. You can make them internal with these. It's only a small amount. It's going to be on every page anyway. But always for me, I just make them external. Then we come back to our, let's move that across a bit, code. So on the, sorry, did I do the SCSS? I did. So we're going to grab the CSS from there, copy that. We're going to stick that into our code box. It's going to show us an error because we've got these style tags here, which you do not need because this is already a Sass file. So we get rid of the style tags. There's our CSS copied to CodeBox. We then want to do the JavaScript, same, Control A, Control C, CodeBox. I'm going to do a new snippet. It's going to be my pointer. Pointer tracker, and this is going to be JavaScript. And we're going to do that as an external file as well. Paste that in there. Again, because it's already a JavaScript file, we get rid of the script. You only need these script tags if you're putting this into HTML, but this is actually a JavaScript file. There we go. So they're done. Now, what we can do here is get rid of that code, delete those from there. In fact, get rid of that entire section. Save this. Enable my JavaScript. Enable my CSS. And then have a look at the front end. And there we go. Now this is ready to use on any page on the site. we just basically go to a page, and if we want the pointer tracker to be large, we add this class here. If we want it to be small, we add that. If we want it to be medium, we add the medium version. That's done. That's moved to WPCodeBox, and that's what I would highly recommend that you do. Now, at this point here, we're going to get a little bit more detail into how the code actually works and a little bit more of a tip on the JavaScript side of things. Okay, so heading back to the JavaScript side of it. So let's go to our pointer tracker. Now, with code, when I put code into the code boxes in the Bricks editor, I normally put this block here at the top of it. Okay, and this block here is for tracking. We can use that to track whether scripts have run or not. And the reason I do that is because you could accidentally end up pasting this code into multiple places in the same editor, and we want to make sure that it only runs once. And the easy way that I found to do this is have a little bit of tracking code. What this does is at the beginning of my code, it looks to see if we're using the tracking code. If we're not using the tracking code, just execute what's below it. If we are using the tracking code, by the way, W and D here I'm passing in as window and document just for brevity. So when you see D dot, that's document, W dot is window. Okay, so I'm looking for, so I'm saying we have got this defined. So we're looking for the BB status. We're going to try and set the status of a name. So we're going to call this script pointer tracker in it. We're going to try and set that status to true. And if that function returns true, then we're going to run the rest of this code. If it returns false, we won't. Coming back up to the set status. Okay, set status. What that does, when we try and set a flag value, if it's already set, so if it's not undefined, we return false. So we can't set it more than once. So with this code here, I try and set pointer tracker. If it's already been done, it'll return false, which means this doesn't run. Okay. If it has not been set, it will set the flag and then return true. So what that means is the first time we try and set the status here for pointer tracker, it returns true, and then we run the code. The second time we try and set the status for pointer tracker, it returns false, and we don't run the code. That just avoids this running multiple times if you put all this onto the same, multiple copies of this onto the same editor. That's just something I do with all mine. But because we're putting this into WPCodeBox, we're not going to have that issue. So I can actually delete all of this code up the top here because we don't need it. Okay. We can change this if we want to. We can get rid of that if, but it doesn't matter. It's going to run anyway because BB status is not going to be defined. So we're not going to worry about it. Okay. So that I'll save that and we'll just double check that our front end is still working. Yep, we're all still working on the front end, so that's good. All right, now before I explain the rest of the JavaScript, I'm going to explain the CSS because it'll make sense then. So our pointer track CSS. Basically, we have an element which is a pointer tracker, and that is a position fixed. By default, it's off the top of the screen, so we can't see it. We're at a Z-index way on top of everything. We're setting our width and height to whatever our pointer tracker width is up here. And giving it a radius of 50, translating it by -50, and that is so that the pointer tracker here, so I'll go to the big one, see the mouse is in the middle, so by default it the tracker is tracking where that mouse is, but because we want that circle to be centered, we tell it to translate by -50, and that just centers it with the mouse. Okay. And then we've got to set pointer events to none because it's on top of stuff that we want to click, so we don't want the tracker to interfere with any of our mouse pointer events. So that's the simplicity of that CSS. Okay, we then have a little rule here, and I'll show you where that works in the JavaScript. So when our body has the tracker outside viewport, we want to set our width and our height of this tracker to 0. What that does is as we move off to the side here, it's a bit hard to see when you've got the scroll bar. See how it goes down, see it shrinks down? It's a bit hard to see there. See how it shrinks down to 0? And the reason for that is that we want to have it so that when we get to the edge, when the edge of this tracker goes outside of the viewport at its normal size, we're going to shrink down to 0. And the reason we will do that is we do not want this tracker to cause overflow scrolling when we go to the side. So that's what that's for. All right. And we've got some JavaScript which detects where we are where we are in the viewport, and it adds this outside VP to the body when it's too close to the edge. All right. And then we just got our size utility classes that we showed you earlier, where we just add these classes to any element, and they will be tracked. And when we mouse over, it will change the pointer tracker width. So it changes that width, and then we mouse away from that, and it just goes back to the default width up here. So we remove that class. All right, so that is pretty much the CSS. Straightforward. Now, the pointer tracker JavaScript. So we explained all this here. What we want to do is go from the bottom up. So we wait for the window to have the DOM content loaded event before we initialize. So this means we can stick our code anywhere. It doesn't have to be before all of the stuff that it's tracking, because it's not going to run until the DOM is fully loaded. So that we wait for that. We then call our where's our init? Call this init function here. Now the init function tries to get the element by the ID of pointer tracker. So remember, in the CSS we've got a element of pointer tracker. So it tries to get that. If it doesn't exist, then we add that to the DOM. All right, so that's all this bit's doing here. And now we've got a tracker element, whether it exists or we've just added it. We then want to find out what the width of that element is, divide that by 2. So remember, because we're centering on this, so our default is 2 rem. So what we're going to do is that when 2 rem, when the edge is close to the screen, we want it to drop down to 0, right? So what we're doing is saying that half of that width of that pointer, when it gets further too close to the edge, then we're going to drop it down to 0. That's what this is for here. We've got a function to handle our pointer move, and we've got a listener on our document to run that. So what that's doing is that every time the pointer moves, we get a pointer event, which has a client X and client Y property, and we just set our tracker elements top and left to those properties. So it's just tracking whatever's happening with the mouse. We then use all of this here. Part here is really for avoiding overflow. So this here is finding out, is our tracker outside of the viewport, or is it inside the viewport? If it's outside the viewport, we're going to add tracker outside the viewport to our body. If it's inside the viewport, we're going to remove tracker outside viewport from the body. Now CSS over here works by, if it's outside the viewport, reduce our width and height to 0. Inside the viewport, then use the whatever this is set to here. All right, and that's all that's for. Now, the bit that makes these go small or big, depending on what you're hovering over, is the next bit. And that is down here. We have a, here we go. So we're going to, on our document, we're going to find our size change selector, all instances of that. Now, up at the top here, I think I put a constant I did here. So the size change selector is any class that contains that string there. So that's where it's got the dash S, dash M, or dash L. All of those classes are going to match that selector. So we're going to grab all of those, do a for each. We're going to add a mouse enter event on each of those. So that'll be the icon, the button, and this text in this case. When the mouse enters that box, we're going to get our target, and we're going to add to the body the class list. We're going to add, this is another little function we're going to do. We're going to add the class list. So for example, here, this icon here has got that pointer tracker size L, right? What we're doing is that is used for the JavaScript to know that it's got to track it, but then it actually copies that class and it sticks it onto the body. Okay. So mouse enter. We're going to find the class on the target, and we're going to add that to the body. and when we mouse leave, we're going to remove that size from the body. So I'm going to show you that in action. So that's pretty straightforward action there. I'll show you that in action. So here's our DOM. If I look at my, oops, we look at the body, zoom in on that a little bit so we can see. It's probably too much. No, that's okay. So watch this body, the class list in this body. When I roll over the text here, so it's changed, and I've now got on that body, I've got pointer tracker size M. It's hard to move the mouse to show you that. So just look at the body, and you'll see the last class on there is BB pointer tracker size M. Roll over the button, and we can see our BB pointer tracker size S. Roll over the icon, and we can see our BB pointer tracker size L. So that JavaScript there, this bit here, is what's doing that. So find the class on the element and then add it to the body. And what that does is when it's added to the body, it sees this class on the body and it changes our pointer tracker width to be whatever those sizes are. That's it in a nutshell. So hopefully that all makes sense to you. And I really wanted to approach this tutorial a little bit differently because I think some users find my methodology just a little bit too in-depth and sometimes a little bit too involved for them. So I wanted to give everybody the opportunity so that whether you just want to copy and paste into the editor and you've got your pointer working, or whether you want to be able to modify that and improve that by putting your code into a code manager, or whether you want to understand how the actual code works, I wanted to cater for everybody. So hopefully I've done that here. If there's any ideas that you guys have that you think I could do this differently or better, let me know. I'll chuck the link to the gist in the description here, and that'll give you your starter template that you can use to play with this. All right, thanks for listening, guys.